Today's conversation is not about sugarcoating relationships. It's about saving them when everything is on the line. I'm joined by Dr. Becky Whetstone, a nationally recognized marriage crisis manager who works with couples in the most high-stakes moments in their relationships: infidelity, betrayal, emotional shutdown, and the crossroads between divorce and repair. Dr. Becky is known for her direct, compassionate, and no-nonsense approach to helping couples rebuild trust and make clear decisions when emotions are running high. If your relationship feels fragile, confusing, or on the brink, this conversation matters. Let's get into it. Hi, I am your host, Leonette Talley, and you are listening to Virago 24/7. Virago is Latin for female warrior, and 24/7 is for all day, every day. Virago 24/7 is a weekly podcast that brings diverse women together to talk about life and our experiences in this world. We share our views on self-love, mental health, marriage, children, friendships, and really anything that needs to be talked about. Here, you will find everyday growth, everyday healing with everyday warriors. Hello, Dr. Becky Whetstone. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you.
It's nice to see you again. Full disclosure.
Thank you for having me on your show.
Oh my gosh. I'm gonna just be open to the people that are listening. I have recorded with Dr. Becky before. We recorded last week. And there is no evidence of these recordings because I don't know what I did. We had a 50-minute conversation that doesn't exist. So I appreciate you coming back on. So Dr. Becky Whetstone, you are a licensed marriage and family therapist. You call yourself the marriage crisis manager. Mm-hmm. You are from Little Rock.
I am.
And we established that my husband is also from Little Rock. He wanted me to ask you what high school you went to. Did you go to high school?
Parkview High School.
Parkview. Okay, I'll let him know because he went to Hall.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and his mom was an English teacher and she taught at Central.
Oh,
yeah. For many years.
Well, those are the big three. Mm-hmm. I mean, other people in Little Rock might argue with me, but Parkview, Central, and Hall are the big three.
Are the big ones.
That's where most of my friends went.
Okay, wonderful. All right. So she gave us permission to call her Becky.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you.
So tell us about yourself, how you got started. Let's start from the beginning.
Oh, wow. I grew up in Arkansas. In El Dorado, Arkansas, which is in South Arkansas near Louisiana, and it's oil country down there. And so I grew up in a town where very early on, you realize there's sort of a caste system, there were the billionaires from the Murphy Oil Company, and the Murphy kids were my age and older. And so most of me and my siblings were in school with them, and they went to the public schools in El Dorado. So, but everybody always knew, if you were a billionaire Murphy or a Murphy cousin or whatever, and that their kids would be delivered every day to school in a limousine. But to their parents' credit, it was just a regular station wagon. Their limousine. But you're aware of this wealth thing, right? Mm-hmm. And then there's the middle-class kids, and then there were the redneck kids, and then there were the colored people. Segregated. Mm-hmm. The Black people in El Dorado had their own schools and their own area of town. It was very bizarre. And when my parents and I would drive out to their area of town, it would be like going to a third world country. I remember that. They're like not paved roads. The houses weren't painted. They looked like shacks and shanties. And so, I just think that I was very sensitive to that as a kid, and I think that that in my DNA was sort of born this compassion for people that were, living lesser than lives in poverty or like how the Black people were treated in my town, and as luck would have it, my school, they began a little testing of integration, and the first Black child in my elementary school, we got one Black child, and he was put in my class. And his name was Gregory Dykes. He was such a fun, sweet boy, and I felt very protective of him at the time. But it's interesting because I've wanted to talk to Gregory Dykes all these years about what that experience was like, because I just can't even imagine. And because some boys were not very nice to him.
Mhm.
And I looked and looked and looked for him about every 6 months for the last 20 years. And just literally last month, I found him on the internet in an obituary.
Aw.
It was so sad. And it said Gregory, he lived in Illinois, but he never married. He didn't have kids. He really he lived for his parents. And it had a picture of him as a grown up and everything. But if he'd have been a little more present on the internet, than he was, I could have found him and talked to him about that experience. But I just think that stuff like that, formed my compassion and kind of wanting to help people who were had little or no privilege whatsoever, and so then when I graduated from high school and started going to college and stuff, and I started noticing that my biological family, that we were bumping heads and having issues. And so I started asking myself this question: am I crazy? Are they crazy, or are we all crazy? And so I decided to go to therapy and start figuring this out. I didn't really know anything about therapy at the time, but the insights I got there, were just so mind-blowing to me and really helped me improve mentally and emotionally very quickly. And so I suddenly became very interested in the counseling profession and what was possible there. And then a few years later, I married my kid's dad, having put my dream of being an advice columnist on the back burner for a variety of reasons. But lack of belief that anyone would ever hire me was a primary reason. Because I've always been a writer. I've always loved writing, and I've always loved the idea of relationships and used to devour advice columns. But here I am being a housewife with my kid's dad. And when we first met, he was very, very loving, like the most loving, and he's so attractive. Oh my God. And he was just adored me and doted on me. And I just thought I'm the luckiest person in the world. And we got married, and we went to Australia and New Zealand for a year or two because of his job. And sometime during the first 6 months of our marriage, he became emotionally cold and distant, sort of slamming a door in my face. And I started having depression and panic attacks because I was like, what the hell, And, this was unbelievable that, I don't know. I spent the next 5 years trying to get him to come back and connect with me, but I failed. And that I got to a point where I just couldn't take it anymore. He was kind of mean. He would say mean things. He would always tell me I was wasting my life. And that just looking at how I lived my days made him sick, because I guess he could see that there was something in me that was meant for more. But at that time, I wanted to do something more, but I didn't know what it was. But anyway, we went through a marriage crisis. I got fed up with him. He came home from work one day. I said, I think I want to separate, and I don't know if I want a divorce or not, but I can't take this anymore. And so we entered this thing called a marriage crisis. And we went to our marriage therapist, asked him what to do. And he said, look, if you're not interested in working on the marriage, I can't help you. So he sent us away. And my soon-to-be ex-husband and I handled it ourselves, and it was an absolute disaster for all of us and our friends and our family. And then we had 2 little kids, age 3 and 6 at the time, who, paid a price and still pay a price for all our stupid decisions. So that didn't sit well with me, that the therapist could not help us with that. But after, during those days, I started going to all these self-help workshops and seminars and stuff, kind of like Tony Robbins stuff, where they hit you over the head and you come out of there going, I can do anything.
Yeah.
So they really pumped me up with confidence and stuff. So I just made it my business to force the San Antonio newspaper to hire me as a feature writer. And then my goal was to become a columnist of talking about relationships. It took me 2 years to get the column. And then when I wrote the column, it was wildly popular in San Antonio. People loved it. So,
how did you end up in San Antonio?
Well, I had been in Little Rock, and I was lamenting, and that's where I'm from, I'd been lamenting the quality of men that I was meeting there. And my sister lived in San Antonio, and she said, look, my husband works with all these good-looking young single men. Why don't you come down here and have a fantasy weekend, and every night you'll go out with a different man. And then on the
Sign me up.
We'll leave one night free at the end, and you can go on a second date with one of them if you want to. So that's what we did. And so one of the guys she fixed me up with was my kid's dad, who happened to be her next door neighbor. And so she kind of knew him through the yard, but he would come over to their house and drink wine and stuff, and they really loved him. So yeah, so she fixed us up, and so I moved down there to be with him. So after I was working with the newspaper, I was single for 5 years now, a single mom, and I remarried a guy that had been one of my dear friends, and we turned into a romance. And I knew he was a little, probably not someone I should marry, but I did marry him when he told me that he was going to run for U.S. Congress in San Antonio. Wow. And I knew he was going to win. So, I had this, back then, I had this part of my ego that loved wild experiences, like power, prominence, it was irresistible to me. So in many ways, I married a man I knew I shouldn't marry, to have that experience up there in Washington, D.C. And I had the experience, all right. We were married 5 years, but our divorce took 2 years.
Oh, wow.
So I went through another dang marriage crisis. And I wrote a book about that whole experience, the 5 years with the congressman. It is an unbelievable story. And that particular story is available on Substack at The Congressman's Wife. And I'm right now in the process of releasing it. I wrote it 20 years ago, but I'm rewriting it and updating it with insights from a therapist's point of view. And yeah, so it's on Substack at The Congressman's Wife. Okay. So when we got divorced, I had just started graduate school in marriage and family therapy, and that saved me, because I was extremely depressed and down over our divorce, and I had to quit my job.
Yeah, I was going to ask you that.
Because of being married to a politician. And then since I had been married to a politician, he had a lot of power in the community, so no one wanted to take a chance on hiring me in a job. We don't want to anger the congressman, So I started hitting all these walls where I couldn't make anything happen for myself. But like I said, thank God I was in graduate school, and I went to graduate school for 5 years and got my doctorate in marriage and family therapy. And when I was there, I made it a point to do a lot of research on what can be done when a couple is in a marriage crisis. And I found a bunch of great research. I was like, why didn't anybody know about this? Why aren't they teaching us about this in graduate school? Because in the marriage and family therapy classes, they never even mentioned marriage crisis or what to do. It was not something discussed. Now, each professor would always assign us 5 or 7 gigantic books to buy, and for their class each semester. And a lot of that information was tucked in those books, but no one had time to read all those books every semester. So most of us ended up putting those books on our shelves as reference material, but years later, like when I was doing my research, I'd pull some of those books down and I'd go to the library and pull up studies and whatnot. And there was just so much research and information on how are the best ways to handle couples in that situation and how to diagnose your marriage to know if you're about to have a marriage crisis. So I was kind of like, wow, this is amazing. I wrote my dissertation on it, which basically means I had to read every study and read every book on that subject that ever was done. And I came out of it so knowledgeable about it. And then I thought, well, I'm kind of an expert in this now, and I'm going to since no one else is helping couples in crisis, I'm going to have to do it. So, and I was going to write a book about it to help people, but I couldn't get anyone to buy my book back then. And so I just started trying to attract couples in crisis to my practice through advertising. And they started coming, and I used all the research stuff that I knew to help them, and I started tweaking and refining it. And so now I've been helping couples in crisis for over 25 years. And then finally, I was able to get my book published last February called I Think I Want Out: What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage. So that's what I'm doing now. And I've expanded marriage crisis management to helping walk people through an amicable divorce process or a positive co-parenting process. So I really feel that marriage therapy has done people wrong by letting them leave when they say they want a divorce, because divorce is one of the most stressful experiences a person can ever go through. And why would they not stay with a family therapists like us who can really help smooth the water and help them not make mistakes and do the things that will damage their family the least? So I'm trying to create something, and my goal is to put family lawyers out of business. And my method of amicable divorce does not involve hiring family lawyers, and using therapists for most of it. And then there's other kinds of lawyers you can hire that are not bloodthirsty, that are more peaceful oriented. And so I tell couples how to do it. And I just want to start having a less awful way of parting ways when you're a family.
So you're saying most therapists only work with couples when they want to save their marriage. Otherwise, you're just kind of left to your own devices to figure things out.
Now, they do tell you in graduate school that you can ask your clients if they would like to transition to divorce therapy. But I don't know anyone that does that. And part of the reason I think is they don't teach us how to do divorce therapy. Yeah. They just say you can do the divorce therapy, but that would be something that you would have to take a special interest in and go study in your own time, So a lot of my classmates, aren't even marriage therapists, even though they're marriage and family therapists. It's so interesting that one of my colleagues specializes in autism, and another specializes in caretaking of Alzheimer's and Parkinson's patient. So just because you're a marriage and family therapist doesn't necessarily mean that you know how to handle couples and families.
So what kind of, in your practice, what kind of couples do you normally see? Do you normally deal with people, both sides are rational and they get it? or do you find that one is more difficult? And how do you handle those kind of people?
Oh, girl. I had a rough day yesterday.
Did you? Did you?
Yeah. I came upstairs and my husband laughs because sometimes I go, it's time to retire. Time to retire. I am ashamed to say that I'm expensive. My fees are expensive. But it also has cost me a fortune to get my PhD in marriage and family therapy and to get all the training that I've had to be able to help people. I estimate I've spent $200,000 beyond graduate school, going to workshops, studying with some of the most respected experts in the world in trauma and healing and divorce and whatnot, And so, and I want to keep doing that. I want to keep my training going and learning more and more and more and more. So I'm expensive. And because of that, I attract high functioning people.
Okay.
So most of my clients are usually college educated in some sort of professional type jobs. And I would say of that group, 90% of them are pretty stable and reasonable. And to do what I do successfully, you have to be stable and reasonable. And if, most people enter the process like a bucking horse, and I realize there's going to be a little resistance in the end because I coach people to do counterintuitive things. Marriage crisis management is a completely different animal than marriage therapy. I am in marriage therapy. Some marriage therapists would never be directive and say, you need to do this, you need to do that. But marriage crisis management is all about me coaching them and being directive and stuff. So I have to sometimes wrestle a few bears, if you will. And I tell you what ends up wearing me out sometimes, and what ended up wearing me out yesterday is the people who I spent, let's say I've spent 3 or 4 sessions with them already outlining everything they need to do, and I send them emails about it, and I send them instructions, and they're well informed. They read my book. They're well informed of what they should do, and they totally disregard everything I say.
Brianna, that sounds like something your ex would do.
It does.
Disregard everything that the professional
Absolutely.
says. Well, he knows better.
He wouldn't made it to the 3rd session, so.
It's like, if it's the leaning in partners, are the ones that struggle the most. They're the ones that want to save the marriage, and then their spouse, the decider, is leaning out and trying to get away from them. And they have to stop pursuit and love bombing and begging and being pathetic and all those things. And we have to get them both stabilized and everyone calmed down before we can do anything else. And the more the leaning in partner chases, love bombs, bitches, screams, cries, shows, just a basket case behaviors, it turns the decider off so badly and almost ensures a divorce decision.
Mm-hmm.
So, but there's just some people that won't stop it. They just won't stop it. And sometimes if somebody will not change their behavior, a therapist is going to start thinking that they have a personality disorder because those people cannot change. They cannot control themselves. They will not. And they're very certain of their perspective and that they know what's best,
Mm-hmm.
So what I say is not especially meaningful to them because, they think by doing this thing over here is going to get the person back, even though I told them if you do that, they're probably going to divorce you.
Yeah.
So wrestling with those people when they're in sessions with me and screaming and carrying on with a decider in the room, I usually just turn my video off when they do that.
You seem like no nonsense. Like you're like, you either want to be helped or you don't.
Well, it's sometimes I turn my video off and run into the other room and get my referee's black and white striped T-shirt and put it on and come back on the screen.
Are there ever times where you're like coaching couples and then you're like, there's no way, obviously their end goal is to make their marriage work and not proceed with the divorce. But is there ever times in the back of your mind where like, there's no way this can work? This is headed for divorce 1,000%.
Yes.
No matter what I do.
Yes. I mean, I tell people after we've given it a good go, and the leaning in partners, because when you're in that marriage crisis, the decision the decider has already made is they won't go back to marriage part one the way it was. And so if the other person isn't working on themselves and isn't evolving and showing that in the interactions that they have with the decider, then the decider loses hope, and the only thing they can do is divorce, so there's plenty of leaning in partners that like they are teachers' pets, and I tell them, you're my teacher's pet. You do everything that I tell you to do, and you might just be a hero and save your marriage and your family. But some are just so immature, and and I can't get them to grow up. I do everything but there's just some people that are resistant and won't grow and change. And if I get an exit interview from this life with some God or some divine source, one of the things I'm going to ask him is, were there personality disorders?
Yeah.
Because that's about 10% or more of the population. So we've all got them in our families, and we all know people who are so difficult. And I want to know why we had to have those people.
Yeah.
Let me know what you find out.
Existed.
So last time last recording that doesn't exist, Shiny was on, and then today Brianna's on. But one of the things that we got into that I really would love for you to share is, once you get divorced, we talked about dating after divorce, with the kids, especially if there's kids involved. Let's talk about that because Shiny's divorced, Brianna's divorced. They're both, trying to figure out how that looks in the next chapter. Do you have any questions on that, Bri? Because I know you're dating, and she had really, really good insight on what not to do.
I don't know. It's funny because I don't feel like I truly know, or I truly knew the effect that my marriage had on me or the divorce had on me until I started dating, and especially dating, having a healthy relationship or going into a healthy relationship. I'm like, there are certain moments where I'm like, damn, that I expect things because that's what I'm used to, knowing that the things that I am expecting are not right and I shouldn't be expecting them, but it's just natural instinct going through. My ex-husband was an interesting human being. It was a very toxic, abusive marriage, and so I feel like there's some trauma there, and so it catches up to me day to day. So just navigating.
What you're telling me between the lines is you have baggage.
I do a shit ton.
And not just from her ex either. And not just from the ex. Oh yeah.
War wounds, and I'm sure that your nervous system is on guard.
It is.
For, any sign that, that could be happening again. Mm-hmm. Which is that's trauma. I mean, we're traumatized by the situation.
It's frustrating.
One of the things to to get healthy, in getting healthy, is to keep in mind that your brain is coupling two things together that should not be together. Like if a man does X, he's like your husband. It's like two things that are like, let every man stand on his own without your preconceived ideas based on what your husband did.
Right.
because that's, it's not fair. You wouldn't want that.
Mm-hmm.
But
Very true.
a lot of things couple, like, just coupling, like a man is an asshole.
Mm-hmm.
People couple things together that should not be coupled, and then okay, so there's a man. Not all men are assholes.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes, and I've talked to many people who are very, very happily married who stumbled in the beginning, but it was all resolved through effective communication and understanding one another. So, some people are real skittish and quick to run. And I just, want to say to everybody is, unless they're doing really awful things, talk, you can work out things and have a mutual understanding sometimes, instead of running and throwing the man in the dumpster. The other thing is I think that one of my pet peeves about our culture is how few people date before they remarry or get married. Like, is it realistic to think after you get a divorce that the second or third person or fifth or sixth person you date is the best match that you can find for yourself? I call this the lazy dating syndrome. I think people hate dating. It's an awful experience, and you just want it to end. So if somebody seems pretty good, you'll just dive right into it and friggin' get married. And first of all, you don't have to get married, everybody. You don't have to. Why do you, you could just date forever. That's an option. I don't know why everybody's so well, you got to get married. So I would like to see people be patient and have a larger sample size of men, because the more men you date, the more you get to know yourself and what you need and what you want and what you won't tolerate.
I feel like I struggle with the opposite. First sign of something I don't like, I'm never speaking to you again.
She literally has.
It just depends. Give me an example. Yeah. Give me an example of something a man did that got him thrown in the dumpster.
It's just it's more so like energy and personality. If it's not sitting well with my soul and I feel any sort of negative feeling, I don't take time to explore that. I don't take time to understand why I'm feeling that negative feeling. I'm just like, it's over. I feel like I'm always on guard, I think, and men scare the shit out of me, to be honest. So why not take a break from them? I did for a long time. I've been divorced almost 2 years. And before I met my ex-husband, I was a single mom for 7 years. So majority of my adult life has actually been single versus I'm not a relationship type of girl. I don't do well with relationships. I'm very independent. I like my space. I prefer to be single majority of the time. So I took a break.
If I had it to do over again, I'm not even sure I would marry at all. Of course, when I was very young and you had a baby out of wedlock, you were shamed and shunned, and but I'm so thankful that times have changed. Mm-hmm. It's not nearly the stigma thing. I still work with clients, and I live in the state of Arkansas that's, a Bible Belt. And some of my clients who are 50 now had a baby when they were 15 or 16 when they were in high school. And they have been embarrassed and full of shame for 20, 30, 40 years, because of that story in their life, and thankfully, most of them can see learn to retell that story in a more positive way. But the culture has helped too by not shunning women who have babies out of wedlock anymore. Thank God.
The other conversation piece that I loved talking about last time was when you mentioned blending families when you do find someone. And you mentioned the author, Patricia, was it Papernow?
Yes.
Yeah, I love that because I come from a blended family. So I just love that conversation. And And, Brianna, not to get into details, but she is dating someone now, and there are children on both sides. And, like, what does that look like? Because I loved your input on that.
Well, if it was me, I wouldn't do it. I just wouldn't do it because there's too many obstacles and complications and personalities, and so somebody's going to get screwed in the deal, in my opinion. But, I think Patricia Pappernell would be nicer about it than I am. I'm not sure she works with families like I do in that regard. But I mean, she is an extreme researcher on the subject. So but you have to be so mature and so well informed of the dynamics that work and don't work in a step family, and 0% of people educate themselves about these
I love
things.
how she said
Just put everybody together, and then the next thing you know, the family has serious problems.
Yeah.
And one of the most common dynamics is at any given moment, depending on what's going on, someone in the family feels like an outsider. They don't feel like they belong. They don't feel comfortable in this new place or with these new people, or they feel that everybody else is melding, but they're not. And that could be the stepmom. That could be the stepdad. That could be one of the kids. It could be several of the kids. And then the other thing is one spouse is easygoing and flexible, and the other one is strict. And you bring a strict parent into kids that are used to an easygoing parenting style, and there will be hell. There will be hell to pay. The kid will not cooperate. They will hate you. They will resent you. So it's very dicey when a step parent comes in and tries to parent their step kids. So it's usually best to not let the biological parent do the parenting, and you stand by as a supportive coach and friend, like a wonderful big sister or a wonderful big brother, who's kind and sort of Jesus-like, But if you come in there, screaming at your stepkids, it's not going to go well. And a lot of I've interviewed dozens of people who are children of divorce. They're grown now, and their stories hurt my heart. They hurt my heart. So the truth is, children want alone time with their mom or with their dad. They mostly do not want to have strangers put into their life that they're forced to call a family. It's weird. Research shows it can take 5 years for a child to feel comfortable in a blended family household, if they ever do.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that adults inflict on children that children usually do not want. Now, I have to say that some of my clients, their step parent was an angel in their life, and they came to love that step parent more than they loved their own biological parent. Mm-hmm. So I do want to give a shout out to those people who do it right and took an impossible job and just loved the kids, but that's not the norm. Mm-hmm. The norm is, like I spent 2 years talking to a stepmom, about her blended family and how much she hated her husband's kids, and she was going to divorce him over this.
Wow.
Yeah. And people leave people that they love because they can't stand the blended family dynamic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I have some stories on that, but
yeah, you do.
I do. I'm the
so
child.
Doesn't it sound just easier not to do it?
So are you saying not to get married, not to blend? Like, what do you mean when you say don't do it?
Yeah, just don't put
I'm doing both.
your two families in under one roof. Just don't do it.
Okay.
Like, how about that? And why can't you just date forever? Why do you need to get married? This is what I'm like. I think marriage should happen less often. I think people should stay free and nimble, so if things don't go well, you can walk out without going through a divorce. Like, I don't, like, if you get married, I want to know why. Why do you want to go into a legal arrangement business, family business with this other person? What is the point? Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, I don't know.
I just think that it's like people just go, okay, we're in love, we get married. I just don't think they're thinking, and like, and I've been married 4 times, 3 divorces. And
so you're speaking from experience.
If I had it to do over again, I wouldn't marry anyone.
Really?
Yeah, I wouldn't. Now, some people really love marriage, but y'all, only 12% of the population are content in their marriage.
12%?
Yeah.
Wow.
So why would you want to sign up with something that has like a 88% chance of you struggling and not being happy, and yet if you want to end it, it's going to be a friggin' ordeal.
Do you think that people are not vetting the people that they're marrying? Are there signs? And I always feel like there's signs in the beginning and that people just ignore and they still go through with it.
There's no doubt. There's no doubt.
Yeah.
When I interviewed people about how they decided to divorce for my dissertation, every one of them knew that they probably were making a mistake. They had the red flags and they just swept them aside for stupid reasons.
I did.
Yeah. So I've done it too. And it's the worst form of self-sabotage. So, most adults are immature. Most have never been to therapy. They don't know how to be a healthy adult. And all their childhood trauma, disabilities show up in their romantic relationships. They'll tell you, I don't act like this at work. I don't act like this with my friends. But put them in with their romantic partner and all those disabilities, emotional, immature disabilities show up, like being controlling, being needy, being dependent, having terrible self-esteem, being boundaryless or being walled off emotionally. Those are a control freak or not having any self-control. Those are all emotional disabilities from childhood trauma. And if people have never worked on it in therapy, then they got them, whichever ones they have. And I can tell by talking to a couple for 30 minutes, most of the disabilities that each one of them have and have always had. And we're going to start working on those first.
So once you get past all of that, what are the couples that you see that have divorce that are amicable? What does that look like?
I've only started doing the post-divorce work in the last maybe 18 months. So I don't have a huge sample size right now.
Okay.
It's just that I was telling people what to do to have an amicable divorce or a good co-parenting relationship. But I don't think they follow my wise instructions. So now I think that I've learned that I need to oversee it with them, to walk them through it, holding their hand each step of the way. So I think this marriage crisis management, that's me overseeing their marriage crisis to make sure they're not blowing up their family. I'm now overseeing their divorce process to make sure they don't blow up their family. And now I'm overseeing their co-parenting process to make sure that they're doing right by their kids and we get it going and I'm watching it for some period of time. And then when they're doing good for a period of time, I cut them loose, and then they come back in every 3 to 6 months to make sure that we're staying the course, because they need that accountability. You know, everyone reports they're always nicer a few days before they know they're meeting with me.
That's funny. So let's talk about your book that you said just came out this past February of this year, correct?
Yeah, I think I went out What to Do When One of You Wants to End Your Marriage.
So what are some good, like a summary of what's in the book?
Yeah, well, the first part of the book, I tell I tell the person, okay, you're got this book because your spouse just told you they want a divorce, or you're thinking about getting a divorce. And so this is what's going on with you. So, most people that read that are in marriage crisis go, holy God, she's describing how I feel exactly. So many people are relieved to find out that what all this crazy feelings and emotions are normal for a marriage crisis. They're not going crazy. They're not the only person in the world. They're going through a process. And so after I explain what a marriage crisis is, then I tell them, here's how you got in this situation. This is where you screwed up, and now you're in a marriage crisis. So I talk about, healthy marriages, talk about how marriages go bad, because there's, humans are a lot alike, and they do a lot of the same things. So there's patterns, that people go through. And so, I bet you if you read my book, you'll find one or two of your patterns in there, And then then it's sort of like, okay, so now you know what a marriage crisis is, and what you need to do right now. And now you know how you got yourself in this situation, and now you want to know what to do. So we talk about, I have a whole chapter on mental disorders, because I think people need to know whether they're married to someone that has the possibility of change. So I give a little primer and overview of things to watch for to see if your spouse has got a personality disorder, or if they've just got something like depression or anxiety or bipolar that are treatable, and then I'm like, the next part of the book is like, should you separate? Here's the stuff that you consider in that, like about separation. Here's how it's going to go down. If you do decide to here's the criteria for separation. If you do decide to separation, here's exactly how you do it. And I have a document in there called the Managed Separation Agreement that they can use as a guideline. And then the next chapter is sort of like, if you want a divorce and you want it to be amicable, this is what you do right here. And then, of course, I have a whole back section on post-divorce issues and the children. And then tons and tons and tons of resources in the back. I'm telling you, if you don't get yourself healthy right now, then you're just going to repeat this mess with somebody else. And this is going to take time, like going to school, and you're either going to do it or you're not. And most people don't do it. Yep. So, but anyway, I put a bunch of great resources in the back of the book that are places that I would go and things I would do. And some of them I have done if I was in your situation. The best books to read, the things you need to know, the kind of mental health stuff you need to be doing, because I don't want this business to keep repeating itself.
Yeah, especially when there's kids involved, because the divorce is not what damages the kids, it's how the adults handle it in the situation. So
absolutely.
So you're doing great work, Becky. I love it.
I'm trying, but I feel like I am trying to herd monkeys,
That's funny. Bree, do you have any questions for her before we part? Or Becky, do you have anything additional that you would like to add?
I don't. You ask great questions.
Oh, thank you. I can talk to you forever. I have so many questions, but I know we have to kind of keep it tight. So
thank you for sharing your experience and
You're
what
so
you do.
welcome.
Yeah.
One of my dreams is to have a talking about relationship marathon to raise money for charity. And we will set an amount of money that we want to raise, and people donate to get us to shut up.
That's hilarious. I love
that's funny.
So maybe one day we could do one of those marathons, and when people have had enough, maybe they'll give us 20 or 50 bucks to shut up.
That's
We can give
hilarious.
it to a charity.
I love it.
Oh my gosh. Well, I want to thank you. Like I said, I can talk about the blended thing. I can talk about divorce all day long. Like I love anything about relationships. So I really appreciate you coming on.
It's hard. It's really hard.
Yeah.
Everything I'm asking of people is really, really hard.
Yeah.
But we can. It's possible. And so I'm asking people to make the effort to be better.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
I appreciate
You're
you.
welcome.
And I really, really thank you for, coming back on and understanding that.
Happy to be here.
All right. You take care.
guys.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
I will leave you all with this. Your soul already knows the answer. You just have to be quiet enough to hear it and brave enough to listen. Thank you so much for listening to Virago 24/7. If you haven't done so already, go ahead and hit that subscribe button and please give us 5-star ratings. Also, don't forget to follow us on Instagram at Virago24_7 and on Facebook at Virago24/7. And just connect with us and share your story. We'd love to hear from you.
Just give me my space to